Hey, in the last RTFSC, I reviewed a project called Fizzy, released by 37 Signals. It's basically a Kanban board. What's surprising though is the source code was released, which I went over the last time. Um, a quick update on their source code. There's already a ton of stars. This is like a week old now. A lot of forks, a lot of people watching it. So this is just interesting from the point of view of SaaS. And it's something that I've always wanted for my own SaaS is like, how can I release the source code? I don't want it to be open source. Like, I want to own the code. And I know, like, maybe that sounds kind of crappy, but if you think about it, the alternative, and it's what I do for all of my projects today, is it's just closed source. So nobody sees the source code. If a user runs into an annoying bug and they're thinking, like, man, it would just be easier for me to fix this myself rather than like email customer support and yada, 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 they could just do that. That's what's cool about Fizzy. There's been kind of a lot of outrage at, is this called open source or not? Um, I'm kind of on the camp of it depends on who it is. I think for all practical purposes, this thing is MIT licensed with a clause. I mean, let's have a quick look at that. If we look at the clause inside of this thing, it's pretty much an MIT license with this clause that says, hey, uh, if you make modifications to this, you can't compete directly with 37 signals. Uh, there's been a lot of critique like, no, this is an open source, there's these restrictions on it. Sure, if your plan is to create a copy of this and compete against 37 signals, absolutely, this is not open source. Um, However, if you're just a personal user, or say you're a small business and you just want to set this up for your own use, maybe it's inside of your organization, or maybe you just want to use it for home use or something, I think for the most part, this is open source. I can make changes to it. I could share it with other people. So by that definition, it's open source. For commercial software purposes and competing, it's not. So that's I think where I land on this. I know some people want to call this like source available. I don't care. Like it's words, it's semantics. Some folks have thrown OSI, uh, the open source initiative, open source definition. They've been throwing that around as if like that's the canonical definition of open source. And I mean, it is to some degree. However, whenever you really get into licensing, like I've heard debates where people have said MIT is not truly open source, but GPL is. The reason is for MIT, you could create a copy of it, deploy that commercially, make a lot of changes to it, and you never have to share that back out. So, uh, in that sense, is that really open source? Whenever you can just drive your source code fork into a black hole and it never has to see the light of day. Some people would say it is, some people would not. GPL, on the other hand, if you make changes to it, you have to release those back out. So I guess this kind of veered into licensing. Um, I like this. I think this is a sane option. Again, whenever I think about SaaS, when I make my own, I have a choice of do I just keep it closed source or do I want source code to be available? And the way I look at it, if your source is available for certain users, it's just much easier for them to get in there and fix a bug. They don't have to bother support. They actually feel better about the interaction because they actually had agency on changing the product and making it better, even if it was hosted for their own use. So that's kind of where I land on this. Not as much towards the zealotry of OSI and their definition of it. All right, let's get into actually going through this repo though. So as I said before, there were a lot of stars. From the last RTFSC I did, I pointed out two security issues. Um, that was pretty cool to see this one actually get fixed. And here's the issue for it. So here's the tweet. And of course, if you're generating any kind of random codes with .sample um, inside of Ruby, just know that .sample is pseudo-random. It's not truly random. And if you're generating codes, you don't want pseudo-random because they can be guessed. So there's a secure random number generator here that uses secure random and it fixes that problem. However, I actually think this is the more minor security issue they pointed out. I haven't actually checked, but whenever I did my last walkthrough, there was a problem where, as far as I could tell, these magic links were being sent without adding some kind of token to the session. So if you send out magic links, do not just send out the link. The reason being is somebody could intercept that link and click on that link, and then they have access to your account. What you want to do is you want to set some kind of token in the browser session. That link that gets sent out has to be presented with that session to whatever it is that's authenticating, so that if an adversary opens up that link and intercepts it, they don't have the session token, so they can't gain access. You as a user, whenever you get that link, you open it in the browser that you used to initiate that has a session, you're going to be in. There are usability issues with that though, and that if say the link opens in an in-app browser for email, obviously the sessions token not there, so you might display a message that says something like, "Copy this link and paste it into your um, browser used to kick off the repo." All right, enough about licensing. Enough about core Fizzy. Let's get into Fizzy SaaS. Actually, before we do that, take a look at this video course I put together about beautiful Ruby. My Black Friday sales ended, so I got to take that down. Actually, I'll keep it up for another week. How about that? So we'll say you have until December, uh, what is that? 15th, middle of December. I'll update it that way. You can get this course and learn how to build Rails UIs using Flex. So if you want to build if you want to build UIs and Rails with components, check this out. I know that's like anti-Fizzy because Fizzy is all about like vanilla Rails and all that fun stuff. All right, let's get into this though. So this is a bit of a surprise to me. I thought I covered the Fizzy repo and I'm like, oh great, I'm done. But it turns out I'm not. There's another repo called Fizzy SaaS. I think this was released on the same day as Fizzy. I just, for some reason, missed it. So I wanted to look at this. And my understanding of this repo is that this is what 37 Signals is using to kind of wrap the Fizzy repo to deploy to their production environment. So this is the hosted one that people would be paying a monthly fee for if they want 37 Signals to host and maintain Fizzy. Which again, that model, I love that model. I think it's a great model. It is a bit of a departure from Once. If you recall, Once they were just purely selling these products only as like, hey, you have to host these yourself. Um, People don't want to host their own software. Like, okay, people do, but not everybody. And I would say most non-technical users, they definitely don't want to host their own software, and that is likely an issue with these two products. So let's see what's going on here. I think this is kind of a nice middle ground that they're discovering. And I have cloned the repo here, so we have the README. And I just want to, again, I like starting in Gemfiles to see what's going on here. So we have a plugin here, the mysterious Queen Bee plugin. I've seen some people ask, what is the Queen Bee plugin? And just for fun, let's see if that thing is out. So Queen Bee Ruby. I don't think this is the plugin, right? So this is just some gem that somebody else has 2 years ago. So this is some other thing coming from the Basecamp Queen Bee repo. We have Rails structured logging, and of course, there's active resource needed by Queen Bee. This is kind of funny. So active resource, that is a client that Rails kicked out a long, long time ago to consume RESTful Rails endpoints. So that's interesting. That's kind of informative for like where should we go with this source code. All right, so that's a pretty good kind of starting point for the gem file. Another thing I want to look at is the gem spec. So I'm actually a bit surprised to see a gem spec here, and I'm not sure if that means that this gem is embedded in Fizzy or if that goes the other way around. But we can see here that Fizzy SaaS is distributed as a gem. It also has dependencies in there, as we can see. So on top of what we have in our gem file, we have Sentry Rails. So this makes a lot of sense. We're going to be monitoring a production environment, and it looks like Sentry is being used for that. I don't know what these Yebeda dependencies are. That's interesting. Prometheus, I believe, is a network monitoring tool. Let's check this Yabada though with gem.wtf. So, all right, double slashes, that's no good. Interesting. So here we are at Queen Bee Ruby, updated 2 years ago again. So maybe this is the right gem. It could be a fork or something like that. I'm not sure, but that's surprising to see. Yabida. Yabida? I don't know how you'd pronounce that. All right, let's do WTF again, gem.wtf. All right, so now we're being bounced to a different repo. All right, so monitoring the garbage collector. All right, I probably just typoed the wrong thing into the last gem that I checked. So let's try this one more time. All right, so this is a gem for Ruby metrics collection. Cool. I've never heard of this project. It's probably one of those things that's been around forever, and I'm just living under a rock. So there you have it. Live under a rock. All right. So it just looks like we have a ton of monitoring, which makes a lot of sense. The console things here are for whenever you, or not you, whenever somebody from 37 Signals logs into production, these can log their activity that they're doing inside of there. So it's all the things you would expect to take a Rails application and put monitoring around it and operationalize it in production. So cool. Let's see what's in the Docker file. I'm sure it's just a regular Rails application. Nothing too crazy there. This LibreOffice stuff is kind of interesting to see. So there's something going on in these containers that need LibreOffice. That's maybe it's to generate Excel files or something. So that's cool. We have SQLite in there. I don't know if I'm surprised. I think I am surprised to see SQLite in there. I was expecting to see like a Postgres or a MySQL client for this thing. So there's two things that are surprising me off the bat. There's the gem spec that we have in here. I wasn't expecting to see a gem spec coming in here. That tells me that this project is being mounted inside of another project somewhere. And then of course SQLite. Again, that's surprising. I'm not sure if LibreOffice needs that or something else. So it's always good if you want to see what's going on inside of a Rails project that has a Docker file to check out what is apt installing. That's going to give you some interesting hints and provide some interesting clues. Everything else looks pretty straightforward here. That looks like garbage collection, configuration, stuff that I don't really understand what this means, but I'm sure somebody from an ops team would. All right, next thing I want to do is check out the database. Let's see what we have here. So we have audits. All right, so it looks like this is strictly for the console audits. So those gems we saw that were logging console activity into Rails, that's being done through this audit. All right, so there's probably not much going on with the database there. There's the MySQL stuff. All right, deploy beta, deploy production. So these are different deployment targets. I think those are Kamal files. I actually haven't played with Kamal yet. I should. I should. I've back in the day, I really enjoyed Capistrano and how fast it was. And it's something where I'm like, man, if we could have that back, and maybe Kamal does that. But like, you know what? Nothing beats. If you go back far enough, there was a time where if you deployed your PHP application to a server, you could just open it up on FTP and Dreamweaver and make a change and save it right to the server. No CI, no specs. It was glorious. All right, let's check out some of the views that we have going on here. There's sign up views, completions. So there's not really a whole lot going on in this application here, right? It looks like it's just taking a name. So enter your name. There's an application. So I'm guessing that Queen Bee is that is probably some kind of like central application. So um, if you think about kind of where SaaS is headed, actually, let's start with where SaaS is at today. Traditionally, if you deploy a SaaS, you have one database that has every single customer in it. So if you have McDonald's and Pepsi all in one database, you're typically going to have a table in there called accounts. And you can't escape from that. If you're going to sell SaaS, you have to have some way where a customer can go in and sign up and say, hey, I'm so and so. Here's my payment information. Um, Here we go. It's off to the races. So um, if the account is in good standing, that would grant access to whatever it is that they want to use. I call those entitlements. So you would grant an entitlement saying like, hey, this user's account's in good standing. They have an entitlement to access these features. And I don't see much of that in here, right? There's some very basic sign up stuff, but that's kind of it, right? We just have this this sign up view, and that's it. And then I don't know what this is. I don't even know like if this thing's being used. Maybe it is in the admin controller, but yeah, there's admin here, a pretty empty thing going on there. I don't know if this is a base class or something, but my guess is that there's something going on in the Queen Bee repo that connects whatever this is with the actual Fizzy application. And it's probably the thing that's dealing with, hey, here's all the accounts, here's the people that have signed up. And that's probably where most of I guess, the meat is uh, for the operationalization of Fizzy. Let's keep going through here and see what else is going on. I'm actually surprised at how little there is inside of this thing. So that I wouldn't be surprised if there's more stuff coming. I would imagine that kind of figuring out what 37 Signals has to figure out with Fizzy, where how can we have this thing be completely open source that doesn't have all that like multi-tenant stuff built into it? How can you keep kind of your core application single tenant, but then have multi-tenancy deployed? Um, this is actually an interesting use of SQLite, because in that kind of context, each of your customers could just have their own SQLite database. It's very different from how we run SaaS applications today. A challenge is our migration tooling and all that stuff, but it's not impossible. Um, and actually, the way I think about it is you're essentially deploying desktop software to servers that you control. And if you think about that, you're deploying to like 1,000 different desktops or 10,000 different desktops. The thing you need to be able to do is to upgrade those databases on those desktops on their local data set. So if you think about it that way, but you kind of pull back from the desktop and you run desktop software, let's call it workgroup software on your own servers that have files, then you have a bit more control over that. So you can control the upgrades. But there's like different things you have to think through for migrations there, right? If you run a migration for all the databases, it would have to go through 10,000 databases and migrate those. And I know that's like, oh, that sounds like a pain, but it's not necessarily more difficult than install desktop software. That does have challenges, but it's doable. People have been doing it for decades before centralized computing existed and the cloud existed. So it's not impossible. Let's see if there's anything in the rake file. Statistics, not really. So this is pretty empty. Kind of wondering like where this gem is referenced. Maybe it's referenced in Fizzy. So I want to do a quick check in Fizzy and we'll see what we have here. I haven't gotten updates on this thing in a week. So look at that. There's a ton of updates. This is the beauty about open source. People have willingly submitted patches. They read the license knowing that they're entitled to no commercial rights or anything in the future to this and they can't compete. And they did it on their own. So I think that's awesome. Uh, it's it's kind of funny like how many people are upset by this. Um, all right, so let's look for Fizzy SaaS in here. All right, so there we go. I think this is where things are kind of coming together, because if you recall from the last um, RTFSC I did, actually that looks the same. So I kind of wonder. Now I'm wondering what's going on. But anyway, if we look at like Gemfile.saas here, this is saying, hey, include this bundle with um, with this .saas deployment. So there's probably a script somewhere that's referencing this in like a deployment. Yeah, so there's a GitHub workflow and it says, hey, we're going to use the gemfile.saas. And that's kind of the extra thing. And I think this is my question around like, well, where are the MySQL dependencies? Because I remember seeing that in the first. Are they in here? Let's see. Yeah, so we had the database adapter in here and there's some MySQL stuff. Fizzy MySQL. Oh, is that another gem? Docker start Fizzy MySQL. Oh, no, that's not. That's just the name of the service. All right, so anyway, this thing's using MySQL. The Fizzy is. I think there's going to be a SQLite release. I haven't actually looked into this. For what it's worth, I haven't really looked at Fizzy that much or followed it other than just cracking open the source code and looking at it. Uh, been too busy with a lot of other stuff. But all right, so I guess if we look inside of this thing, where the Fizzy SaaS is pulled from, it's Gemfile.saas. And again, if I do a search for this thing, we can see there's some different tests and stuff that are happening. I gotta say, there's not a ton going on inside of Fizzy SaaS. It seems mostly like monitoring and auditing tools are in there. What I think is going to be more interesting is Queen Bee, and I have no idea. I don't talk to anybody from 37 Signals, but I would imagine that Queen Bee has some really interesting things that I talked about that deal with multi-tenancy, and a lot of these other issues that I talked about, well, where are the accounts actually tracked? Where are the entitlements provisioned? So we'll see if 37 Signals open sources any of that. I can see how they would want to not release all of that at once because, as we've seen kind of their trajectory and their history, they start playing with once. I think there was a revelation there that, hey, selling hosted software, it's cool. People want to look at the source code, but it's probably like fairly limited in kind of how many customers would actually use that. And kind of their bread and butter, the SMBs of the world, of the non-technical users, will not be interested in that. So it makes sense that they're shifting more towards um, hey, engineers, you can clone this and use it all you want. You're not really our core. Um, but we do want to benefit from the improvements that you're going to make, and we want to go ahead and sell this to non-technical customers. That makes a ton of sense whenever you look at it that way. And you can see a world where, again, in some ways, it's like WordPress, where here's this project that's kicked out. Although there's been some drama around it. I think Matt, um, I forget the guy's last name, Wallenberg or something. He had some fiery, spicy post about how this was not open source. Um, uh, you know what? I don't want to get too into that, but I will say, like, here's my thing. I'm not going to go into as much detail. What I like about this, not open source license, whatever you want to call it, open source, quasi open source, this is very upfront. There's no rug pull here. Um, there's been projects recently like Min.io. They're open source for a long time, and then all of a sudden they become a commercial success, and then they just kind of stop contributing to that, or things happen. And they kind of start off being these open source projects, and then they just kind of slowly start removing things. So I think whenever you look at any license, actually, if you look at any project, whether it's open source or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's in the contents of license.md, and what matters is your context. So again, if I wanted to compete against 37 Signals with a Kanban board, I'd be an idiot if I started making modifications to this and doing that, right? So like clearly, if I read the license, that would be a dumb move for me to make. So I would not do that. Um, but if I just wanted to screw around and have some kind of Kanban board for my small business or my group of developers, this is great. I can make modifications to it, contribute them back, keep them to myself. That's in that context, I'd have a lot of freedom, and it's functionally open source for me. Um, so I guess one way of looking at this is like, oh, this is terrible, yada yada yada. I think another way of looking at this, and this is how I look at this, is that this is very plainly stated up front. And the other thing I really appreciate about this is there's not this huge license. I don't have to read through like 42 pages of stuff, right? This is a 10-page license. And it is granting me the permission to take this software and do whatever the hell I want with it, unless I'm trying to compete against 37 Signals. So I don't know. I guess open source is in the eye of the beholder. I think it's a marketing term. The thing that matters more is reading the actual license and understanding it for your context and for your purposes. I think I'm going to leave it at that. It'll be interesting to see if we get to see any parts of Queen Bee. I'm hoping for some migration tools that come out of that. I think like that's kind of in my mind the big crux, is just dealing with the migrations. The active support stuff, I'm sure, is being used for Fizzy to access some of those entitlements, to figure out, how much can a user access within this thing that we're running. So I guess stay tuned. If anything comes out about Queen Bee that's open sourced, of course I'll RTFSC, and we'll see what's in there. But until next time, I'll see you later.